With that, I call to order the meeting of the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission for Thursday, July 9th, 2020. Start off with a couple of announcements. The first one being that the Board of Zoning Appeals has been canceled as there were no cases, so we will not hear anything for the Board of Zoning Appeals today. And the second announcement is welcome back to John McKay. He is an appointment of Councilwoman Becky Tuttle. And John, welcome back. Glad to have you with us again.
Thank you.
First order of business is the approval of the Planning Commission minutes for June 18th. My records show that absent were Joshua Blick and Terrell Florence. Everybody else was present. Is there a motion on those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Green, a second by Miss Miles. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I must abstain.
And with one abstention, John McKay abstains. We will now go through and see which items we can take by consent. So on the agenda, consideration of subdivision committee recommendations, agenda item 2.1, which is a final plat located near East 21st Street North and North 143rd Street East. Is there anybody on the commission wish to hear that item? Seeing none, is there, let me see on, okay, nobody on there. Is there anybody at Century 2 wish to hear that agenda item?
No one at Century 2.
No one at Century 2. Is there anybody else online by another device that wishes to hear agenda item 2.1? Hearing none, we will take that by consent. Agenda item 2.2 is a one-step final plat, New Spring Commercial Edition, near East K96 Highway and East 21st Street North. Anybody on the commission wish to hear that item? Seeing none, is there anybody at Century 2 wish to hear that item?
No one at Century 2.
Okay. Is there anybody from another device, phone or at home or office, wish to hear that item? Seeing none, we will take that by consent. We have a motion on agenda items 2.1 and 2.2.
Second, Mr. Hartman.
Motion by Mr. Hartman, second by Mr. Hicks. Excuse me, you. We'll take a roll call vote on that. Mr. Florence?
Aye.
Mr. Hartman? Aye. Ms. Miles?
Aye.
Joe Johnson is absent. Bill Johnson?
Vegas calls.
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Nix?
Aye.
Mr. Blick is absent. Mr. Dewell? Absent. Ms. Dexler?
Yes.
Ms. Gross?
Aye.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
And I vote yes. 11, 0, and 3 abstentions or absence. Okay, going to public hearing items. Agenda item 3.1, a vacation of a platted utility easement near East 37th Street North and North Woodlawn, showing an address of 3810 North Woodlawn Avenue. Anybody on the commission wish to hear that item? Anybody at Century 2 wish to hear that item?
No one at Century 2.
Anybody from another device wish to hear agenda item 3.1? Seeing none, we'll take that by consent. Agenda item 3.2, a vacation of a 30-foot unconstructed street right-of-way near Northwest Street and 13th Street North. That's showing an address of 3534 West 11th. Anybody on the commission wish to hear that item? Anybody at Century 2 wish to hear that item?
No one at Century 2.
Anybody from another device wish to hear that item? Now we will take agenda item 3.2 by consent. Agenda item 3.3, a vacation of a portion of a platted floodway easement located near North Webb Road and 21st Street East, showing an address of 9032 East Lake Point. Anybody on the commission wish to hear that item? Seeing none, anybody at Century 2 wish to hear that item?
No one at Century 2.
Anybody from another device wish to hear that item? Hearing none, we will take agenda item 3.3 by consent. Agenda item 3.4, vacation of a portion of a platted drainage and utility easement near North Ridge Road and West 37th Street North, near the intersection of Estancia and Palomito, is that how I pronounce that? Not sure. Anybody on the commission wish to hear that item? None. Anybody at Century 2 wish to hear that item?
No one at Century 2.
Anybody from another device listening in want to hear that item? Take that by consent. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve 3.1 through 3.4 agenda items.
Thank you.
We had a motion to approve. Was there a second?
Yes.
Who made it? Is that Mr. Florence?
Mr. Florence.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes.
Florence. Okay. We have a motion by Ms. Dexler and a second by Mr. Florence. We'll do a roll call on that. Mr. Hartman? Yes. Ms. Miles?
Yes.
Joe Johnson is absent. Bill Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Nix?
Aye.
Mr. Blick is absent. Mr. Dool is absent. Dexler?
Yes.
Ms. Gross?
Aye.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
I vote aye. Mr. Florence?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Okay. Going to public hearing items. Agenda item 4.1 was withdrawn by the applicant, so we will not be hearing that. Agenda item 4.2 is a conditional use to permit daycare located in an area near West 21st Street North and North Waco Avenue, showing an address of 2105 North Jackson. Anybody on the commission wish to hear that item? Seeing none. Anybody at Century 2 wish to hear agenda item 4.2?
No one at Century 2.
Okay, anybody from another device wish to hear that item? Hearing none, we will take agenda item 4.2 by consent. Agenda item 4.3, a conditional use for an accessory dwelling unit on less than 1 acre near North Webb Road and East 45th Street North, showing an address of 9400 East 42nd Street North. Anybody on the commission wish to hear that item? Anybody at Century 2 wish to hear that item?
No one at Century 2.
Anybody from another device wish to hear that item? We will take 4.3 by consent. Agenda item 4.4, conditional use to allow an event center near East Kellogg Drive between El Pico and Bleckley, showing an address of 5025 East Kellogg. Anybody on the commission wish to hear that item? We will hear that item.
4.4.
Agenda item 4.5 is a zone change from single-family residential to two-family residential located near South Mays Road and West 31st Street South. Anybody on the commission wish to hear that item? Anybody at Century 2 wish to hear agenda item 4.5?
Yes, we have one speaker.
We will hear agenda item 4.5. Okay. Agenda item 4.6 is a zone change from multifamily residential and general commercial to limited industrial. Located near West Douglas and Walnut Street. It's near the Delano Overlay District. Anybody on the commission wish to hear that item?
Yes.
We will hear that item.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve items 4.2 and 4.3.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Green, second by
Miles.
Ms. Miles. Well, one blank there, excuse me. Ms. Miles, how do you vote?
Aye.
Joe Johnson is absent. Bill Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Foster,
Aye.
Mr. Nix,
Aye.
Mr. Blick is absent, Mr. Dool is absent, Ms. Dexler,
Yes.
Ms. Gross,
Aye.
Mr. McKay,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Aye. I
I vote yes. Mr. Florence,
Aye.
Mr. Hartman. Passes unanimously. Okay. That is all of the items that we have there. The first item to hear is 4.4, am I correct?
That is correct.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Year Out, do you have that one? Yes, sir.
We never ran the hearing procedure audio.
Oh, thank you. We will do that so that people know the rules of speaking. So can we have our public announcement?
Oops.
Oh, yeah.
Point fingers.
Always blame the staff.
I guess that's known as trickle down, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the chairman's fault, but go right ahead.
Before we begin the agenda, the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission and the Wichita-Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. For those at Century 2, copies of the agenda for today's meeting, the public hearing procedure and Planning Department staff reports on all agenda items are available in the lobby. The Planning Commission's and the BZA's bylaws limit the applicant on a zoning, subdivision, or variance application and his or her representative to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing on that item, plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion of that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the chairman may extend these times by up to 2 minutes. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please share your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the room or the GoToMeeting comments box. This will enable staff to notify you if there are any additional proceedings concerning that item. Please note that all written and visual materials you present to the Commission and the Board will be retained by the Secretary as part of the official record. If you are not speaking, but you wish to be notified about future proceedings on a particular case, please provide your contact information to the Planning Department. The Planning Commission and the Board are interested in hearing the views of all persons who wish to express themselves on the agenda items. However, we ask that all speakers please be as courteous and concise as possible and avoid long repetitions of facts or opinions which have already been stated. For your information, the Wichita City Council has adopted a policy for all city zoning items. A copy of this policy is available from the planning staff. The City Council relies on a written record of the Planning Commission hearings and does not conduct its own additional public hearings on these items. The decision of the BZA is final. Any appeal of a decision of the BZA is to district court.
First item is agenda item 4.4. Kathy, you're gonna make that one?
Kathy Morgan, Planning Department. I am going to present on behalf of Dave Yearout, and if you have any really specific questions, he can answer them. So, would you go to the first slide, please? As it states in the staff report, this is an old Davis Moore car lot location. It's, you can see where the arrow is pointing there between El Pico and Bleckley on the south frontage road of Kellogg Street. Next. And here's an aerial, so you can see the building there, and then it's got a lot of surface, concrete parking, surfaced area. So next. And it is located in an area that is identified in the future growth concept map as being new residential, but that's not what's located along that area. So we'll address that later on in the staff report. Site plan for this property, as you can see the building in the heavy black lines, and then you can see the parking spaces identified on the plan. There is residential at the south end of the property. Next. This is looking east at the site. Just go on around the building, please, Jim. And this application is submitted by Strategic Workspace, sorry. Here's looking at the southeast corner of the site. You can see there's a wooden fence there that is in need of repair that separates or provides screening to the residential to the south. Next. Northwest from the site, just to give you an idea of what's around it, and then across the street north. And then, go ahead. West of site, there's residential, and north along Bleckley Street. So in your background, there is a statement from the applicant about Strategic Workplace being a co-working community that has private offices located in this building. They offer venue space to accommodate networking events, workshops, training events, seminars, lectures, or learning events. They host some of these events themselves, and they allow the public to rent space to host events for themselves as well. They anticipate that some of the use of space for such as wedding receptions, but have no interest or plan to be responsible for the distribution of alcohol on the premises. If somebody wishes to provide their guests with alcohol, they must do so by hiring a licensed bartender. Bartending service with no exception. They are also subject to engaging the services of a private security firm if they will be serving alcohol. This is pretty standard for event center in the city. So I would just like to point out under recommendations, item 5, that no outdoor events shall be permitted unless this conditional use is amended as provided by the Unified Zoning Code. The hours of operation are limited to 6 a.m. to midnight, Sunday through Thursday, and on Friday and Saturday until 1 a.m., from 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. Events larger than 30 persons shall have private security on site at all times during the event. So this is, if they aren't selling alcohol or providing alcohol, but there's 30 or more persons, they have to provide security. I'll answer any questions that I can, and otherwise Dave can field them.
Any questions for staff?
I just have a quick question, Kathy. Just looking at Dab saw this on July 1st. Do you know what the outcome of that vote was?
Yes, they approved it. There was one abstention, but they approved it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Kathy? Seeing none, we will move on. Is there anybody at Century 2 who wishes to speak on this item or ask questions?
The applicant is online.
Oh, okay, my fault. I'm really not with it today, am I?
It's okay.
Kelsey.
It's Thursday.
Yes, I'm here online, Kelsey Shackelford from Strategic Workspace. Anybody would like, I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Mr. Foster.
Mr. Foster,
Is she in agreement with staff comments?
are you in agreement with staff comments on the report?
Am I?
Yes.
as far as the no outdoor events without an amendment to the conditional use permit, the times, 6 to midnight, Sunday through Thursday, Friday through Saturday, 6 to 1 a.m., and then the private security with or with alcohol, or with or without alcohol, for 30 or more people, absolutely.
Okay,
So I'll just be very clear. Like, so the majority of the use for our event center is really going to be intended for the business community of Wichita. But that's not to say that, like I did mention that there, I'm sure there will be the opportunity for someone to come in and rent it for like a wedding reception type thing. But in that instance, our contracts actually read that they have to hire security, they have to hire a private bartending company. We really don't want alcohol use on our property, to be honest with you. We just know that there's going to be some situations where we're probably going to have to allow it, so we're just going to regulate it to the best of our abilities. But as far as trying to be a nightclub or a party scene, that is absolutely not our goal at all. So I just want everyone to know that we're not trying to disrupt the community that we're sitting here in, that the residents around us, we want to be respectful of them and keep them in mind with everything that we do.
thank you. Any other questions? Appreciate that. Now we will go to comments from the audience. Is there anybody at Century 2 wish to speak on this item?
Nobody at Century 2.
Is there anybody from another device listening in that would like to speak on this item? Hearing none, we will take that as a no. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I could chime in just briefly, because I was the one that went out on the site. The notation that was made about the fence along the south side, that is a requirement of the Unified Zoning Code for a screening fence. And we did put as a condition that needed to be repaired, brought up to code, and I think they know about that as well. And if anybody has not, I would encourage you to go to this facility. If you've ever been in a car dealership facility before, and particularly in the repair shop and service, like what's on the backside, you go into this, you're going to be amazed. They've done an outstanding job of converting this into a high quality facility that will be available to the community and a great asset to the community going forward. And these conditions are consistent with what we've done with all other facilities of this nature around the city. So
Thank you.
I just wanted that on the record.
Okay.
Thank you.
With that, I'll bring it back to the commission for questions or action.
Move approval.
Have a motion by Mr. McKay, a second by Mr. Hartman. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we will take a roll call vote. Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Nix?
Yes.
Mr. Blick is absent. Mr. Dool is absent. Ms. Dexler?
Yes.
Ms. Gross?
Aye.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
I vote yes. Mr. Florence?
Yes.
Mr. Hartman? Yes. Ms. Miles?
Aye.
And Mr. Joe Johnson is absent. Passes unanimously. Okay.
Gonna be a long one today.
Next item is agenda item 4.5, a zone change from single-family residential to two-family residential.
Jim, would you start with the site plan? As you can see, this is out in the country. It's the property has been platted. Go back one, two, go one more. There you go. The property has been platted into lots, and so what they are asking is, this is the Schulte-Johnson addition that is currently being, I don't know where it is in the process of platting. Maybe it's already been to the, has it already been to the subdivision yet? Anyway, they're wanting to change those lots outlined in red to two-family residential. And this is something that we have done before. Turkey Creek addition is one that we've done, that's been done since the beginning of this year. And so this property, like I said, it's platted, but there isn't any development on it. Would you go to through the slides, Jim? So it's wheat fields right now. you can see they did get their sign up. There is this single-family residence to the south, and then this is looking at pasture land across across Main Road. So, as I said, this is not something unusual. This will be done with the public services, water and service and sewer utilities are available to be extended to the site, and that will be the responsibility of the developer. So staff is recommending that this zone change be approved, and I will answer any questions.
Any questions for Kathy?
Again, Kathy, I'll just ask about the DAB vote.
Yes, they voted to approve.
No, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, a communication error, we did not get this to DAB on Monday. It will be taken to them
Sorry,
at their
yeah.
next meeting, which will happen before this goes to city council.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, is the agent or applicant available to speak?
Chris Rose with Baldwin Company, agent for the applicant. The applicant agrees with staff comments, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Chris? Chris, you get off easy. I don't see anything. Okay. Anybody at Century 2 wish to speak on this item?
Yes, we have one resident that has questions.
Okay. Please state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes. You can.
My name is Michael Tommy, and I own the land straight directly to the south of J. Russell's. Question is, the landscape. This area has never flooded. I was wondering, is he going to keep the landscape the same, or is he going to raise it and all the water is going to flow to the south where it's going to flood? Hopefully it won't flood my part. That's one question. And second question is where he wants these two-family residentials. He's got 2 lateral lines on his side, and I had the header cut, so if he ever digs, it won't disrupt the other lateral lines on my side of the property line, and that's already done. But question is the landscape, and anybody answer if he's going to leave it the same or what?
During, Kathy Morgan for staff, during the plating process, they have to submit as part of the plating process a drainage plan because of the acreage associated with this. So that will not drain. It's according to the rules, it will not put water off onto other properties.
Sir, it's kind of hard to hear sometimes through the mask. Were you able to hear that answer okay?
Yes, but is he still going to dig like 5 ponds or whatever you want to call them? He's already dug 1. Is he going to still dig 4 more?
There are reserves noted on the plat, and those reserves are for drainage.
Okay.
Dave, you want to speak?
All right.
Somebody want to speak to the process that we go through to make sure that we don't increase the drainage?
Well, and this is Dave Ura with the staff, when the plat was considered and approved, there was a drainage plan created with that. If Chris Rose is still on the line, I'm sure the applicant can address part of that as the planning process as well. But when they started construction of all this stuff, not only will the utilities have to be extended, which would be build the streets, but also extend water and sewer. That's going to have to be present before they start building any structures. And they're not going to start a construction. The city will not allow that construction until the final drainage analysis has been completed and approved, and all the stormwater on this property will be kept from going on to other adjoining land. That's just built into the standard stuff in city ordinances.
Okay, Mr. Foster?
I would suggest that the speaker be put in contact with Joe Hickel, Stormwater, if he really wants to see and understand the full drainage plan.
Okay. Okay, any other questions for the speaker? Sir, did you get your questions answered, or do you have another question?
I have one more question. Does he have a planning date on when he's gonna start all this? Or do you know?
The staff has not heard a date on when construction will actually start. Maybe Mr. Rose can answer that, the agent for the applicant.
Okay, we'll have an opportunity for the applicant to come back and answer those questions. We'll see if is there anybody else that wishes to speak on this item? There at Century 2? Oh, do you have a question, Ms. Gross?
Does he need us to help get him in contact with?
Shane, get up to the microphone.
Does he need us to help him get in contact with the person in charge of this project?
Mr.
I mean, they're
Hickle,
neighbors and they seem to need communication.
Are you talking about Mr. Joe Hickel about the drainage, or?
Yeah, but, yeah, because he's.
Yeah, if the neighbor has questions, he can contact our office and we'll get him the information on how to contact Mr. Hickel, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, is there anybody else wish to speak there at the Century 2?
Nobody else.
Okay. Mr. Rose, you want to come back? You have 2 minutes for rebuttal.
Chris Rose with Boston Company, agent for the applicant. As far as a timeline on when the construction would start, I'm not 100% sure on that. I think the developer would love to get moving on it as soon as possible. This site, though, is going to have sanitary sewer main run to it, so that might take a little bit longer to get there because we're coming from the east over some private property and everything. So, it might be 6 months to a year before they get the sewer over there. We could probably start doing some stuff before that, but I'm not 100% sure on the start date for development.
Okay. Mr. Van Zandt?
I'm sorry, you need to ask if there's anybody else that needs to speak.
Thank you.
You can have sit up closer.
This is my day for the mess ups. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Rose before I go to see if there's anybody on another device? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. Is there anybody else out there on another device that wishes to speak on this item? Hearing none. Okay, I think we've covered that. Any other questions from anybody, anywhere, from anybody else, anywhere that I may have missed?
Bueller.
Hearing none, I bring it back to the commission for action.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve.
Mr. Dexler approves. Mr. Hartman, second.
Okay, who made the motion? You give it
Mr. Dexler did the motion. Mr. Hartman made a second. Okay. Mr. Florence, do you have a question?
No.
Okay. Do a roll call vote. Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Nix?
Yes.
Mr. Blick is absent. Mr. Dool is absent. Ms. Dexler?
Yes.
Ms. Gross?
Aye.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
I vote yes. Mr. Florence?
Aye.
Mr. Hartman? Ms. Miles?
Aye.
And Mr. Bill Johnson?
Aye.
Passes unanimous. Okay, agenda item 4.6, zone change from multifamily residential to general commercial to limited industrial. Matt?
Yeah, good afternoon, Commissioners. Matt Williams, Associate Planner. This is zoning case 2020, number 23. The applicant requests a zone change from B multifamily and general commercial to limited industrial. The property is not addressed, but it is situated north of a property that's addressed 203 North Handley. The site is primarily zoned B multifamily. However, the former alley on the east side of the property is zoned general commercial.
Yeah.
The application stated that the purpose of this rezoning was to allow for the uniform development with the property at 203 North Handley. That property is Ludeman Insulation and Supplies, and according to their webpage, the company is an industrial and commercial insulation installer and distributor. The property at 203 North Handley, to the south and east of the property that's being considered for rezoning, is zoned limited industrial and commercial, and general commercial. Due to the residential zoning to the north and west of this site, if approved, the site will need to come in compliance with the screening requirements along those sides. Property to the north of the site is zoned B multifamily and is developed as a single family home, and then properties to the west across North Walnut are zoned B multifamily and general commercial. There's some single family homes there and a car wash. Next slide. Next slide. The comprehensive plan identifies the site as being within the established central area. The 2035 future growth concept map identifies the area as residential and employment mix. The area is also within the Delano plan. The future land use concept map from the 2019 Delano plan identifies the area as mixed use. The 2001 Delano plan prioritized the downzoning and of industrial properties in this area and changing them to residential zonings. A large portion of the neighborhood was rezoned during this effort and has downzoned many of the properties. The new Delano neighborhood plan states that the neighborhood continues to have an interest in reducing the amount of industrial land uses while increasing the amount of residential land uses. The plan also states reducing the impact of incompatible uses in the neighborhood should remain a priority. Next slide. The Delano Greenway is a planned project just to the south of this development. This path would connect downtown to paths on the west side of town. The portion between Oak and Walnut is still in design stage, but concepts for this section include a greenway, a cycle track, and a plaza street. Based upon the information available to us at the time we wrote the staff report, we recommended denial of this. If the Planning Commission is inclined to approve a change in the zoning, staff recommends rezoning to limited industrial subject to 3 conditions, including a protective overlay that would limit the industrial uses allowed on the site, conformance with the Delano neighborhood design guidelines of the zoning code, and the submission of a site plan and elevations for review by the planning staff. We can go look at photos, Jim. These are photos around the site. The agent for the applicant did provide elevations and a site plan for this project yesterday. Those should be provided to you. I'm going to let the agent talk about those. We did drive by the site yesterday, and as you can see from the photos, it appears the site has been cleared and prepared for construction, but no concrete has been poured yet, and building permits will be subject to this zone change. The case did go to DAB on Monday, where it was denied 8-1. It's my understanding that the applicant has requested to send this back to DAB prior to the city council meeting with their renderings and site plan that they'll be showing. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Good questions from Matt. I'm seeing none. Is our agent or applicant available?
The agent is here at Century 2.
State your name and address for the record.
Hello.
You will have 10 minutes.
Okay, she got you muted her.
Hi, are you onto the daycare?
No, this is another item. If you would hold, we'll get
Oh,
back
I'm
with
sorry.
you. We'll get back with you. Thank you.
Sorry, can the commission hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Levi Bond, Cobb Valley Engineering Agent for the applicant, who is on the line. Like Matt mentioned, we will be trying to send this back to DAB. Unfortunately, with the holiday weekend, we did not receive the staff report. in time to know when the DAB meeting was. We were not notified in another manner, so we missed that meeting on Monday, but we're going to send it back at a time when we can present the case fully and then have the elevations and site plan there. I don't know that it makes a huge difference for the elevations and site plans for you guys. If you want me to get into detail on that, I can. But just a little background on this case. This is going to be, it's a zone change to allow the expansion of Ludeman's installation and supply. It's mostly for more warehouse space and to get new building tech out there. This is a business that's existed in Wichita at this location since the 60s. The property they own is well over half this block, with 75% of what they own on this block already being either GC or limited industrial. And this is the last 25% that was zoned B right now that we're working on today. And we applied for the limited industrial zoning to allow the 0-foot setbacks. When I get to the staff recommendation, the PO works with LI, and we asked for LI for those 0-foot setbacks so we can use the building as additional screening of the parking lot and the warehouse area. This business, as I said, has been here since the 60s, and it's a great opportunity to allow them to expand and continue contributing to Wichita and Wichita contributing to them. It gives people a place to work close to home. As I'm sure you imagine, we hope you do not deny today. We would ask for approval. And I think when we first got this recommendation, we were a little confused on where it came from. But after discussions with staff and with our client, mostly staff, we were hearing it's mostly because of the Delano plan. They want to reduce the number of industrial zoned lots in Delano, which we understand, to reduce the amount of industrial that goes into this area. But this is an existing business. It's been in the area without complaints for a long time. As far as I know, there's not even anyone from the neighborhood here to protest today. So we think that under your discretion, this would actually be an acceptable zoning. Staff just has to write from the standpoint of the plan. So if you look through the recommendations, really, if you look through the recommendations for denial, zoning and uses and character of the neighborhood. As you guys saw in the zoning overlay, there's limited industrial throughout this entire area. There's GC, and there's some B zoning. There's a total of 3 homes on either frontage on Walnut or on Hanley, and they're all rental properties. There hasn't really been any infill residential in this area for a long time, and I don't foresee that happening with this vacant land that we're doing the zone change on today. The suitability of the project for the uses in which it has been restricted. Like I said, no one's built a home down here for a long time. There's been some renovated, but there's been no interest in taking this vacant land and turning it into a home. So I don't know that would ever be used. So I don't think it's suitable to keep this as B multifamily zoning on these 2 parcels. The extent to which the removal of the restrictions will detrimentally affect the nearby property. Like I mentioned, this is an existing business from the 60s. They're already operating by allowing them to zone this and then build on it. They're going to have newer building tech, so there's going to be less noise pollution in the area. But the use doesn't change. This has just been open area right here. When you do this zone change, you're allowing for better building technology, and then they're going to come in and do some more screening to meet the requirements of when LI is abutting the multifamily for that last house on this block. The conformance of the requested change to the adopted or recognized comprehensive plan. This is the main contention that I got from staff when we were talking about the recommendation for denial. They have to write from the standpoint of what does the plan say, not what do you think, what do I think, it's just from the plan. So when they go through this, the comprehensive plan has this area as a mix of residential and employment. We know that this is probably never going to be a residential lot right there, but this does give us the opportunity to have infill and build out Ludemans and allow them to expand and continue employing people in the area. With the focus of the Delano neighborhood plan, which is where the recommendation now came from, they were trying to limit industrial uses that was talked about. So this won't limit anything. Those continue operating in compliance on the lots they already have. This would just allow them to expand and to continue to grow and to operate as a company more efficiently. Also, by allowing these two lots to be zoned, you're going to allow a building to go north to south and actually screen towards Walnut Street, so there's less stuff exposed to the street. So overall, the impact of this proposed development is very small, and it actually could improve the conditions in the area. So given all of that, and one more thing, I think that also by allowing us to build on this on the west side of the property and putting a warehouse building there, it'll screen it from that greenway plan that they were talking about. It'll also make it look cleaner when they eventually have that bike path go through there instead of looking back into a parking lot or to docks where the property is already zoned correctly. So knowing all that, and not really a correction, but a clarification, they've already started the work out there, as Matt mentioned, and they pulled a conditional building permit. So that is, they requested that they could start the grading, the footings, and the slab out there. And in that, when they requested that, the time they requested that, the MAPC consulted with MAPD, and we don't know how the confusion got started. And they still issued it at the time, even though this got recommended for denial. So they've started the grading out there. They've already ordered the structural steel for the buildings. We've already done engineering plans on this. So there is a hardship element for the owner on this if this was denied just straight up. So at this time, we would like to request that you would approve the zoning with the PO that staff is recommending. That PO, most of those uses are already prohibited due to the supplemental conditions, but it makes things clearer, and we think that the PO would be great on this. Condition number 2 is to be added to the Delano design guidelines, which we ask that you do not accept because this is not covered by the Delano design guidelines area. It's not covered by the overlay. If it was meant to be covered by the overlay, it would have been covered the last time they amended it. And then 3 is that planning gets to review site plans, which they'll do during the building permit for the screening and then the parking and all of that. So that they can review it as much as they want. But really, the alternate recommendation is what we're seeking. And we think that you guys, the Planning Commission, have the right to interpret the request for the zone change and how it plays with the neighborhood plan. At this time, I'd love to take any questions. Like I said, the applicant is available remotely. Let me know if you have any questions.
Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Hartman.
Levi, on these, the plans here with the elevations, can you explain those a little bit? Is the existing building the white building or the brown building?
Mr. Hartman, it is the brown building. So that would be south here. So brown building is on the south. And then this is the white building here that'll be along Walnut. That's kind of what I was talking about. Since it runs north to south like that and where the docks are positioned, it actually screens for those along Walnut. So it works a little bit better. And then over here back to the east is still all that GC, limited industrial and all of that. So they already see it and they're used to it. They operate the same way.
So the new building is it's basically just a continuation of what they're doing there now?
Correct. It's more warehouse space for what they're already doing.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. We got questions for staff. Levi talked about a protective overlay. Is that the wording on page 3 of the report? We talked about if we wanted to approve that we implement some recommended wording and conditions. Are we all on the same page? Is that the protective overlay we're talking about?
Yes, Dave, you're out with staff. They're asking. His request was grant the LI zoning with the protective overlay that's shown, with the exception of removing condition 2 and possibly 3.
Okay, question on 2 and a question on 3. Okay, thank you. Other questions for the applicant? Mr. Foster.
Mr. Bond, in the report information that I've received, I have seen no elevation views that you've referenced. So I really have no analysis that I can make relative to the Delano plan. I'm assuming you would not want to defer this and await your presentation to the DAB before it came back to this body?
Correct. Our preference would not be to defer, and I think that Mr. Hartman might have actually just handed you those, or someone did in the screen, but the elevations were recently prepared by the architect. At the time of filing the case, this was a straight zoning. As you guys know, you don't necessarily have to have a site plan or a architectural elevations for a zoning case, and we didn't receive a request for them, and we didn't even know that this would be denied until, well, we didn't know that they would recommend denial until Monday, so we got them to you guys as quick as we could. But like I said, no, we would prefer not to defer.
Okay, any other questions for the agent? Thank you, Levi.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else there at Century 2 that wishes to speak on this item?
No one else at Century 2.
Is there anybody from another device listening in that would like to speak on this item? Let me ask the committee, would you, I know, David, you just got that. Do we want to take a 5-minute recess to look over the drawings that we received before we make a decision? Or are we ready to proceed?
Well, I'll just make one comment. Is you might recall a case we had a while back about a storage facility there on Douglas, west of Seneca. And the applicant did a very good job of taking the design guidelines and making all that work, and it's a nice facility. So that's what I'm looking for here is where's the attempt to make this work with existing plans? And my first brush of it, I don't see it. So I think there needs to be a little bit more time to understand that.
Okay.
Is this muted?
Let me see if there's any other
Mr.
questions.
Foster, if I could, this is not covered by the current design guidelines by the Delano overlay, and that's why the building architecturally is designed the way it is right now.
Okay.
But I agree. I think I'll leave it to your discretion whether we need a little more time today.
Well, if we do, we're talking, you know, a short recess. So is anybody on the commission want a short recess, or are we ready to go forward?
Ready to go forward.
Okay. I'm not seeing the movement for a recess. So let's additional comments or recommendations from the committee.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the limited industrial with the protective overlay.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Does that include items 2 and 3 on the staff report?
Yes. Question.
Okay. Mr. Hartman. Rob, you need to go to the microphone, please. Sorry about that.
So will there be any architectural review of this building?
If item 2 is approved, then there would be, the design guidelines would be required, and it would go in front of the Delano Design Review Committee.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Mr. McKay.
Question to the applicant, do they agree to the overlay requirements? I don't know that I got that they did or didn't.
The applicant is agreeing to the overlay with the exception of they're requesting item 2 and item 3 be removed.
And the motion that we have has items 2 and 3 included. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Johnson.
I'd like to understand, was there a conditional permit issued where they started the grading?
It's our understanding that, yes, a conditional permit was allowed, issued, so they could start the grading on the site, yes.
I guess thinking back, at one time all this property was industrial and there was quite a bit of discussion when they wanted to change all that, wanted everybody to change, and we knew we was gonna have some issues like that. With that said, I could see where they went ahead and done drawings and all that. So I think I'd make a substitute motion to approve, but to eliminate 2 and 3.
We have a substitute motion to approve, but eliminate the items 2 and 3 on the recommendation. Is there a second to that? I'll second that. So we have a substitute motion with second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Foster.
Mr. Foster. Thank you.
I'm going to support the original motion where the protective overlay would include items 2 and 3, because, you know, a lot of effort has gone into this Delano plan. If you'll remember back when we addressed it as a body and studied that and recognized all the work that went into that, I think that just supports that whole effort there. And I'm very confident the applicant can come up with something that'll work within the area, plus respect the applicant's long-term relationship with the neighborhood. So I would support the original motion.
Additional discussion on the substitute motion? Seeing none, we'll take a vote on the substitute motion to approve the protective overlay but eliminate items 2 and 3. Mr. Nix?
No.
Mr. Blick is absent. Mr. Dool is absent. Ms. Dexler?
No.
Ms. Gross?
Am I voting to approve Mr. Foster's recommendation?
I'm sorry, I couldn't say it.
Am I voting to approve Mr. Foster's recommendation?
No.
Okay.
This is Mr. Johnson's motion.
Okay, no.
Mr. McKay?
No.
Mr. Green?
No.
I vote yes. Mr. Florence?
No.
No? There we go, thank you. Mr. Hartman? No. Ms. Miles?
No.
Mr. Joe Johnson is absent. Mr. Bill Johnson?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Foster?
No.
Motion fails. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9-2. Goes back to the original motion to approve, including items 2 and 3. Further discussion on the motion, the original motion.
I just want to make a comment. I won't be able to support this motion because, as Mr. Foster referred to, we spent a lot of time and put a lot of effort into making these neighborhood plans. And we're trying to work on revitalizing Delano and making it an area that draws people to the area, and seeing that we've made the effort to try to reduce some of the industrial in the area, I won't be able to support this. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Johnson, did you have another question or a comment?
Yes.
Go right ahead.
I guess what I'm going to say, this company's been here since the 60s, so the Delano plan come way, way, way after that. So we're going to put some hardship on an existing business that's been there long before we went through that plan. So that's the reason I made the substitute motion.
Further discussion. Seeing none, we'll have a vote on the original motion. Everybody understand the motion as was presented? Ms. Dexler?
Yes.
Ms. Gross?
Yes.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
I vote yes. Mr. Florence?
Aye.
Mr. Hartman? Yes. Ms. Miles?
No.
Mr. Joe Johnson is absent. Mr. Bill Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Nix?
Yes.
Mr. Blick, Mr. Dool are absent. Passes with one no vote. 10-1? 10-1.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anything else on the agenda that we have? Mr. Van Zandt?
Sorry, it appeared that a caller came in after the case had already been voted on. Would you address that for the daycare, I believe?
I appreciate that. Is there anybody else out there, I think we've got everybody here in Century 2, but is there anybody listening in on another device that wishes to speak to the commission?
I came into the call late. My name is Marissa Harris. I was supposed to be for at Bible Way. I'm guessing you guys already spoke on that.
Okay, can you give us an address or a general location of which property this was, you were calling on?
There's the daycare there.
Which one is that?
4.2.
It's off of
4.2.
We do that by consent?
No objection.
She's the
It's passed.
Yeah, we've already had that one and that has passed.
She's the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
That's the applicant, okay, thank you. Is there anything else? Anybody else out there that we've missed? Seeing none, if nobody else has anything, we stand adjourned.